He had won a few medals during World War I and hyperbolically embellished his exploits. He jumped on every woman who'd let him, and firmly believed that every woman who didn't let him was a lesbian. He landed in L.A. with a flash roll and some snazzy threads and gravitated toward the movie biz. His career as a Hollywood bottom feeder topped out in the late 40s. He got a gig as Rita Hayworth's business manager and allegedly poured the pork to Rita on many auspicious occasions. My mother won a beauty contest and flew to L.A. in December of '38. She was a 23-year-old registered nurse from the Wisconsin boonies and the Elmo Beauty Products' newly crowned America's Most Charming Redhead. She toured L.A. with the most charming blonde, brunette, and gray-haired winners, took a screen test, and flew back to her job in Chicago with $1,000 in prize money. L.A. kicked around in her head. She learned she was pregnant, aborted herself, and hemorrhaged. A doctor acquaintance fixed her up. She got the urge to start over in a sexy, new locale. She took the train back to L.A., found a pad and a job, and met a schmuck who may or may not have been an heir to the Spaulding sporting goods fortune. She married the guy and divorced him within a few months. She met my father in '40 and fell for his good looks and line of bullshit. My father deserted his wife and shacked up with my mother. They were married 6 years into their shack job and 7 months before my birth. They told me stories, took me to movies, and encouraged me to read books. They force-fed me narrative lines. I grew up in the film noir era, in the film noir epicenter. I read Confidential, Whisper, and Lowdown magazines before I learned to ride a two-wheel bike. My father called Rita Hayworth a nympho. My mother wet-nursed dipsomaniacal film stars. My father pointed out the two-way mirrors at the Hollywood Ranch Market and told me they were spy holes to entrap shoplifters and disrupt homosexual assignations. I saw Plunder Road and The Killing, and learned that perfectly planned heists go bad because daring heistmen are self-destructive losers playing out their parts in a preordained endgame with authority. Johnny Ray was a fruit. Elizabeth Scott was a dyke. All jazz musicians were hopheads. Tom Neal beat Franchot Tone half dead over a blonde coos named Barbara Payton. The Algiers Hotel was a glorified fuck pad. A pint-sized punk named Mickey Cohen ran the L.A. rackets from his cell at McNeil Island. Rin Tin Tin was really a girl dog. Lassie was really a boy dog. L.A. was a smog-shrouded netherworld orbiting under a dark star and blinded by the glare of scandal-rag flashbulbs. Every third person was a peeper, prowler, pederast, poon stalker, panty sniffer, prostitute, pillhead, pothead, or pimp. The other two-thirds of the population were tight-assed squares resisting the urge to peep, prowl, poon stalk, pederastically indulge, pop pills, and panty sniff. This mass self-denial created a seismic dislocation that skewed L.A. about 6 degrees off the central axis of planet Earth. I knew an inchoate version of this at age 9. I knew it because I came from L.A. and my parents told me stories and lies. I knew it because I read books and went to movies and eschewed the gospel of the Lutheran Church in favor of a scandal rag concordance. I knew it because my mother was murdered on June 22nd, 1958, and they never got the guy who did it. My mother's death corrupted my imagination and reinforced my sense that there were really two L.A.s. They existed concurrently. I bebopped around in the cosmetically wholesome other L.A. I conjured the secret L.A. as a hedge against outer L.A. boredom. The secret L.A. was all sex. It was the shock and titillation of a child slamming up against the fact that his life began with fucking. It was my father's profane laughter and scandal sheet deconstructionism. The sheets rendered beautiful people frail and somehow available. Common lusts shaped and drove them. Their pizzazz and good looks made them more and less than you. If the wind blew a certain way on a certain night, you could get lucky and have them. The secret L.A. was all crime. It was Stephen Nash and the kid he slashed under the Santa Monica Pier. It was Harvey Glatman and the cheesecake models he strangled. It was Johnny Stompanato shanked by Lana Turner's daughter 2 months before my mother's death. Crime merged with sex on 6/22/58. My secret L.A. obliterated the outer L.A. I've been living in it for 39 years. I've reconstructed L.A. in the 50s in my head and on paper. I did not come on vacation or go home on probation. I lived in the literal L.A. and dreamed my own private L.A. I left the literal L.A. 16 years ago. It was simply too familiar. I left the secret L.A. 1 book and 1 memoir ago. I made a conscious decision to drop L.A. as a fictional locale. I had taken it as far as I could. I've been jerked back to L.A. 53. A man made a movie and reinstated my L.A. life sentence. Curtis Hanson is serving life himself. His sentence carries binding permanent residence clause and a work furlough waiver. He's got 10 5-year hash marks on his jail denims and the beach pad characteristic of all successful L.A. lifers. He splits town to make films and comes back to L.A. rejuvenated. He's serving his life sentence voluntarily. He made Losing It in Calexico, California, and Mexicali, Mexico. He made The Bedroom Window in Baltimore and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle in Seattle. He made The River Wild in Montana and Oregon, and Bad Influence in present-day L.A. It's the Faust tale, retold for yuppies and hipsters, and a symphony in bold colors and smog-kissed pastels. It doesn't look like any other L.A. film. Hanson has provocative L.A. roots. He's second-generation L.A. stock. His birth certificate is stamped Reno, Nevada. His father, Wilbur, was working on a government road crew there when Curtis was born. Wilbur Hanson was a conscientious objector. He refused to fight in World War II and served out his draft commitment with a pick and shovel. The Hanson family moved back to L.A. in '46. Curtis and his older brother banged around a big, run-down house at 5th and Hobart. His mother rented out their spare rooms. His father taught at the Harvard Military School and chauffeured rich kids to school for extra money. Wilbur Hanson was a gifted and thoroughly dedicated teacher. He took his students on field trips and gave them more time than he gave his own sons. The Harvard School was an upscale dump site for the sons of the Hollywood elite. Darrell F. Zanuck's son matriculated there. Old man Zanuck got a hard-on for Wilbur Hanson. He didn't want no fucking CO teaching at his kid's school. He applied the big squeeze and had Wilbur Hanson bounced from Harvard. Wilbur Hanson caught a Red Scare bullet, but dodged another one. He got certified to teach in the L.A. City school system. He was not excluded on the basis of his expressed pacifism or his documented CO status. The family moved out to the San Fernando Valley. Wilbur Hanson began teaching at a school in Reseda. Wilbur and Beverly June Hanson encouraged their sons to read. Beverly June loved movies and dragged Curtis and his brother to bargain matinees all over the valley. He had seen dozens of film noir flicks before he knew the term film noir. He watched Dragnet, M Squad, The Lineup, Racket Squad, and Mike Hammer every week. School bored him. His real curriculum was films, novels, and TV shows. His major course of study was narrative. His minor course of study was crime. He wrote a story called The Man Who Wanted Money and read it to his 5th grade class. His teacher found the story and Curtis's general crime fixation disturbing and ratted him off to his parents. Curtis had a dual world thing going. He had his family, school world, and his film, book, TV show world. He figured he'd grow up, become a screenwriter and director, and pull off a two-world merger. He developed a dual LA thing. It grew out of a dual thing with his dad and his Uncle Jack. Wilbur Hanson was a morally committed schoolteacher with $1.98 in the bank. Jack Hanson was a morally desiccated rag merchant who sucked up to movie stars and showbiz players. Dad had a shack in the valley. Uncle Jack had a big pad in Beverly Hills. Dad spent most of his time with school kids. Uncle Jack hobnobbed with Hollywood swingers. Dad took kids on uplifting field trips. Uncle Jack owned Jack's, the grooviest, sexiest, most altogether Bonnaroo boutique on Rodeo Drive. Curtis spent weekdays in the valley and weekends in Beverly Hills. Uncle Jack loved having him around as a companion for his son. Curtis's two worlds were regulated by his school duties and divided by the Hollywood Hills. Uncle Jack gave him access to a world within his world. It was the fast-lane world of aggressive people out to get all they could and fuck the cost. That world within a world dovetailed with Curtis Hanson's crime fixation. Uncle Jack's movie biz fixation dovetailed with Curtis's ambition to grow up and become a filmmaker. Jack Hanson was noir personified. He was a movie biz toady straight out of the Big Knife. He hoarded money and paid his people the minimum wage. He was arguably the cheapest cocksucker who ever walked the face of the earth. He opened up the Daisy in the mid-'60s. It was the first members-only dance club in Beverly Hills. Jack sold memberships to showbiz hipsters and employed it as his vehicle to suck his way further into the in-crowd. Curtis watched. Curtis took mental notes. Curtis finished school and got a chump job with Cinema Magazine. He drove copy to the typesetters and film to the photo lab. The magazine started to go belly up. Curtis convinced Uncle Jack to take over the operating costs and let him do all the work. He did it. He wrote the critical pieces and feature interviews and took the photographs. He took some shots of Faye Dunaway and was paid with a plane ticket. He flew to Texas and watched the filming of Bonnie and Clyde. It was a period film and a crime film. Curtis Hanson wrote it up in Cinema Magazine. He prophetically called it the most exciting American film in years. I read that issue of Cinema Magazine 30 years ago. I was 19 and strung out on pills and Thunderbird wine. I was breaking into houses in a ritzy L.A. enclave and stealing things that wouldn't be missed. I was shoplifting and reading crime novels and going to crime movies. Hanson got me hot to see Bonnie and Clyde. I saw it and wigged out on it. I stole the money that paid for my ticket. A year ago, I drove out to Lincoln Heights to watch a day's filming of L.A. Confidential. It was mid-August and very hot and humid. A northeast L.A. street was doubling for a street in South L.A. 1996 was doubling for 1953. Period cars lined the curb. A dozen equipment trucks and trailers were parked just out of camera view. 20-odd technicians and gophers were standing near a catering van. They were snarfing cookies and ice cream bars in the 100-degree heat. The focal point was a shabby wood-frame house. It was a near-perfect match to the house I described in my novel. I visualized the scene I wrote in 1989. A cop vaults a backyard fence and walks up a flight of outside stairs in broad daylight. He slips the catch on a second-story door and enters a cramped apartment. He sees a woman gagged and tied to a bed with neckties. He walks into the living room and shoots her presumed assailant in cold blood. My cop was named Bud White. He was a huge man with a football injury limp and a gray flat top. The movie Bud White is an actor named Russell Crowe. He is a compact and muscular man with dark hair and a quasi-flat top. I watched Crowe nosh an ice cream bar and bullshit with extras in cop uniforms. The actors playing Lieutenant Ed Exley and Captain Dudley Smith were standing across the street. My Exley was tall and blond. Guy Pearce, the film Exley, is medium-size and dark-haired. My Smith was burly and red-faced. James Cromwell, the film Smith, is pale and imperiously tall. I felt like I was entering a brand-new LA world and a multimedia extravaganza. Period snapshots and scandal rag headlines formed the visual borders. The audio track was the sound of my written words spoken by the actors around me. My mother's ghost was somewhere in the mix. She was eating popcorn with a spoon and humming K-Star's 1952 hit Wheel of Fortune. I reeled behind a jolt of heat and 1,000 quick-cut blips of my own private L.A. I had written L.A. Confidential as an epic hometown elegy. It was established fact and half-heard scandal and whispered innuendo. It was the world of horror I had first glimpsed the day my mother died. It was Mickey Cohen and his henchman Johnny Stompanato. It was Hush Hush Magazine, my stand-in for Confidential. It was sex shakedowns and perverts modeled on Stephen Nash and Harvey Glattman. It was the bloody Christmas police brutality scandal and the twisted story of a theme park disingenuously disguised to remind readers of Disneyland. L.A. Confidential was conceived and executed as a large-scale novel. It was not written with an eye toward movie adaptation. I did not expect it to bushwhack me 6 years after its publication. I read the screenplay. 2 writers had taken my milieu, my characters, and a good deal of my dialogue, and fashioned their L.A. world within my L.A. world. I walked into the wood-frame house. I was entering their visual world now. I passed the bedroom where the woman would be gagged and bound with neckties. I found Curtis Hanson framing a shot in the living room. He saw me and smiled. He said, "What do you think?" I said, "It looks inspired." I had dinner with Hanson that night. We met at our mutual favorite restaurant. The Pacific Dining Car is a swanky steak pit on the edge of downtown L.A. It's been there since 1921. It's dark and wood-paneled. It's a self-contained time warp in a city of time warps and dark continuums. Hanson's Uncle Jack brought him to the car for steak dinners that his father couldn't afford. My father brought me to the car on my 10th birthday in 1958. I met my wife at the car. A minister married us a few yards from my favorite booth. I sat down in the booth and stretched my legs. I was exhausted. I'd watched Bud White shoot the rapo 24 times. I'd watched Hanson refine and perfect the scene. I felt dispersed. I was losing track of all my LAs. Hanson showed up a few minutes later. A waiter brought us our drinks automatically. We discussed the day's shooting and the thematic shifts between my novel and his film. Our conversation drifted back to LA in the 50s and the dark corners we had peered into as children. I said, "There's a phrase that puts it nicely." Hanson said, "Tell me." I said, "L.A., come on vacation, go home on probation." Hanson laughed and said, "It's inspired." October 1997. Let's twist again. The last piece. Seasons of grace come and go. People never designate them in the moment. They look back individually or en masse and impose narrative lines. It all comes down to what you had and what you lost. The lines apply to nations, cities, and people. Kodachrome snapshots offset them. Faded colors send out a glow. Gooey music fills in the rest of the picture and tells you what to think. It was better then. We were better then. I was younger then. It's specious stuff all the way. It's schmaltzy hindsight built from verisimilitude. It obfuscates more than it enlightens. There's just enough hard truth in it to keep it running strong. One season defines the whole mindset. A formal name denotes it. Knights and maidens in a savage time. A three-hanky weeper on stage, screen, and CD. A corny musical and a worn-out media concept. With a three-point intersection running soft and sure in my head. I had my own Camelot. It ran concurrent with the Broadway show and Jack Kennedy's spin in the White House. I lived in a dive apartment with my pussyhound father and our unhousebroken dog. I had a fancifully corrupted mind and poor social skills. I had a Schwinn Corvette with gooseneck handlebars, chrome fenders, rhinestone-studded mud flaps, fringed saddlebags, and a speedometer that topped out at 150 miles per hour. I had a great city to roam and a shitload of kid lore to assimilate. Our pad straddled Hancock Park and Lower Hollywood. To the south and southwest, Tudor castles, French chateaux, and Spanish haciendas. To the north, small houses and studio back lots. To the east, wood frame cribs and apartment dumps on a hilly plumb line downtown. My beat covered Hollywood to Darktown. The southern border was a race line that white kids never crossed. It was pre-riot L.A. L.A. was pre-hysteric. Parents told their kids not to stray south of Pico and let the little fuckers roam. I started roaming at age 11. It was summer '59. I had to start junior high in September. It scared the shit out of me. I bike roamed. I shoplifted books and candy bars. I ran into strange kids in bike cliques and picked up information. How this girl popped some Spanish fly and impaled herself on a shift knob. How Hitler was still alive. The word on aspirin and Coke. The word on Liberace and Rock Hudson. The word on your local junior high schools. LeConte Junior High, a.k.a. LeConte. Cool guys, fast girls, Partyville, USA. A breeding ground for studs in the Lochinvars and Celts. Be cool or stay out. Virgil Junior High. Full of cholos with Sergei shirts and slit-bottomed khakis. King Junior High. Full of Japs and creeps from Silver Lake. The Swiss Alps. Lots of homos who wore green on Thursdays. Louis Pasteur Junior High. Full of uppity spooks who thought they were white. Berendo Junior High. Danger Zone. Pachuco Rumbles. Full of Catholic girls who smoked Mary Jane and had babies out of wedlock. Mount Vernon Junior High, a.k.a. Mount Vermin, a.k.a. Mount Vernon, Niggerland, USA. Beware, beware, frequent homicides and race riots on campus. I was slated to attend John Burroughs Junior High, a.k.a. J.B. I asked about it. Nobody had a riff down pat. I spent 3 years at J.B. It was the buffer zone between my dark childhood and bleak post-adolescence. J.B. was Camelot writ small and contained, and unimpaired by hokey images of lost innocence to come. It was my taste of earned privilege and potent destiny, and the unacknowledged secret pulse of my wild L.A. trip. J.B. stood at 6th and McCadden. It was the southwest edge of Hancock Park. Kosher Canyon kicked in a few blocks away. J.B. divided 2 diverse and significant hunks of central L.A. Pedigreed goys and big-ass homes to the east. Hard-scrabbling Jews in duplex pads and stucco huts to the west. A legacy of entrenchment and a prophecy of powerful emergence. A contentious demographic. 2 gene pools programmed to spawn swift kids. J.B. was red brick and built to last. The main building and north building were contiguous and joined at an L-shaped juncture. Offices and classrooms covered 2 floors linked by wide stairwells. The main building adjoined a large auditorium. A blacktop athletic field stretched south to Wilshire. Shop bungalows and 2 gyms abutted the main and north buildings perpendicularly. They enclosed the lunch court, a paved space dotted with benches and green and gold trash cans. J.B. was named after a dead guy who fucked around with plants or soybeans. Nobody stressed his accomplishments or gave him much play as an icon. He was stale bread. The student body was 80% Jewish. I didn't know from Jews. My father called them pork dodgers. My Lutheran pastor called them complicit in the famous Jesus Christ homicide. 15% of the kids hailed from Hancock Park. Their parents preferred J.B. to prestigious prep schools. My guess, they wanted their kids to compete with Jews so they'd grow up tough and kick ass in business. The final component, Gentile riffraff and a few Negro kids who escaped restrictive housing laws and certain death at Mount Vernon. There's J.B. 59. I storm Camelot on my steed, a 2-wheel taco wagon. I'm tall. My dog shits on my living room floor. I pick my nose with gusto. I stick pencils in my ears and excavate wax in full view of other kids. I'm afraid of all living things. I pull crazy man stunts to attract attention and deter kid predators. My psycho act is now in its 3rd or 4th school year. The performance lines are starting to blur. I can't tell when I'm putting people on and when I'm not. It's 59. Performance art has not been conceptualized. I'm prescient and avant-garde and unaware that I just got lucky. Art requires an audience. Camelots play out on stages, large and small. I hit the one place that would tolerate and occasionally laud my amped-up and wholly pathetic act. I didn't know it going in. J.B. was regimented and rule-bound. A dress and appearance code was strictly enforced. Jeans, capri pants, and T-shirts were banned. Boys kept their hair neatly trimmed, under threat of swats on the ass. Girls wore Oxford shoes and maintained low hemlines. The boys' vice principal ran J.B. His name was John Hunt. He was a short, blustery man. He had bloodshot eyes and ruptured veins and strutted like a low-rent Il Duce. Hunt stressed hard work, hard play, and physical reprisals for fuck-ups. He addressed boys' league assemblies and got borderline bawdy. He said shit like, "You're young men now, soon you'll discover that broad should be broad where they ought to be broad. And I know you're studying hormones in science class. You know how you make a hormone? Don't pay her." Hunt dispensed swats with a space-age paddle. Air shot through the holes on the downswing. He made you drop trow. The aftermath exceeded the impact. The welts, blood dots, and sting lingered long. Hunt had a teacher goon named Arthur Shapiro. Hunt was 5'6". Shapiro was 6'4". He looked like Lurch and Renfield from Dracula. I kept waiting for him to say, "Master, I come." Shapiro hulked around the lunch court. Hunt kept him on a long choke chain. He ran the Space Cadets, Space Legion, and Solarons, kiddie cops empowered to cite other kids for littering and dress code infractions. The little shits abused their power. Hunt and Shapiro backed them up. It was mini-drama worthy of a mini-Camelot, and as futile as JFK's attempts to suppress Fidel Castro. You couldn't quash the exuberance of the JB rank-and-file kid. You could infiltrate his imagination and hope your lessons took. The JB rank-and-file teacher knew this. He knew he was up against a big ego and a sponge-like mind, eager to soak up the latest and greatest knowledge, if it was sold in a boredom-proof package. He learned to digress off his basic curriculum and work in topical angles. He never played down to his kid audience. I had my act. The teachers had theirs. We shared the same audience. I infiltrated it as a JB student. I stood apart from it as a grandstanding leper, afraid of his peers. It's fall '59. I hit JB. I scope out the turf and rule out assimilation. I'm a stranger in a strange fucking land. Ike is still in the White House. I don't know from Camelot. I don't know that I'm about to embark on my first and most formative season of discourse. With little sharpsters with hungry eyes and paper-bound copies of Exodus in their hip pockets. Jokesters who said, "Did you know Abraham Lincoln was Jewish? He was shot in the temple." 12-year-old kids who'd read more books than I had and could recite baseball stats back to the time the Nazis ran Mom and Dad out of Poland. Hancock Park surfers who dry-surfed the main building on slick-soled penny loafers. Girls with stunning big features, die-cast for sex appeal generations back in the shtetl. Girls bred breathtakingly blonde and raised refined by the back nine at Wilshire CC. Kids with their own acts. Kids who could spiel, spritz, run shtick, and perform without hawking their souls. I settled in. I listened. I learned. I performed. I observed. Formal learning came easy. I read fast and retained well. My father did my math homework and supplied me with crib sheets. I gave oral reports on real books and books that I concocted extemporaneously. I hipped a few kids to my ruse and watched them howl. No teacher ever busted me for book report fraud. J.B. had some tray-hip teachers. Lepska Verziano was Henry Miller's ex. I asked my father what this meant. He waggled his eyebrows at me. Walt McIntosh killed Reds in Korea. His gun barrel melted during a Red death charge. He doped out the '60 campaign and held a classroom election. The Jewish kids backed JFK. The Hancock Park kids backed Nixon. I backed Tricky Dick, because my father said that JFK took his orders from Rome. Lawrence Nelson got me hooked on classical music. Beethoven wrote the soundtrack for my JB years. I fell for an English teacher named Margaret Peschel. The kids called her Miss Pieshell. She was dark-haired and slender. She had bad acne. The JB boys considered her a dog. I sensed her inner torment and caught her sex vibe full on. It was Beethovian. I stared at her and tried to zap her telepathically. I tried to tell her, "I know who you are." I looked at her and knew what it was like to love a lonely woman to death. JB teachers were classifiable and divisible by two. Call them the quick and the dead. The quick contingent swung hip. They dug the Peace Corps, cool jazz, and Mort Saul. The dead contingent swung limp, as in elderly and sincere and content to rest on JB's hot rep. The deads were a needle stuck in the groove of a long play record. The quicks faced a Camelocian dilemma, whether to toil for chump change in the LA school system or strike out and try to make it in the real world. JB kids were classifiable and divisible by two. Call them the naked and the dead. The dead contingent swung square, as in no spiel, spritz, shtick, or performance capability, and no sexy angst. The deads did not know from discourse. The deads accepted JB's social stratification, regardless of their status. The naked contingent swung hungry, as in voluble, argumentative, hormonally unhinged, and hip to the fact that the world rocked to a Rat Pack beat and lots of people got fucked in the ass. The nakeds faced a Camelocian dilemma, whether to accede to the realities of social stratification and capitulate to appearances as everything, and deny your own hunger, and seek contentment in conformity, and tone down your spiel, spritz, shtick, and performance capability, and rework it to suit a mainstream audience. Or go iconoclastic all the way and fuck this overweening adolescent urge to belong. The nakeds formed the bulk of the JB student body. I was an uber-naked. I was genetically programmed for self-destructive kid iconoclasm. I expressed it in a buffoonish manner that marked me as harmless. My antics amused on occasion. My antics reminded the rank and file that they weren't as whacked out as I was. I made them feel secure. They rewarded me with tolerance and a few pats on the back. I listened to their spiels, spritzes, and shticks. I performed impromptu or on command. My 3-year JB discourse was rarely interactive. I went for my own jugular. I trashed liberal pieties and ragged JFK. I trashed Jewish pieties and yelled free Adolf Eichmann. I listened to sincerely fevered classroom debates, measured their value, and voiced ridiculously reasoned opinions calculated to agitate and spawn belly laughs. I inspired a few sad-assed guys with no riffs of their own. We became friends. We dissected the JB boys and stalked the JB girls that we craved. I bopped around the lunch court with my stooge, Jack Lift. We lurked, loitered, listened, and leched. There's David Friedman. He pulled in a bundle for his bar mitzvah and laid it down on blue-chip stocks. There's Bad John and his fat sidekick Hefty. The word? They pour glue and glass shards on cats and blow them up with cherry bombs. There's Tony Blankley, a weird kid with a British accent. He's some kind of child actor. Catch him in that Bogart flick, The Harder They Fall. There's Jamie Osborne. Check his British accent. He says he's James Mason's nephew. There's Leona Walters. She's a tall Negro girl. I danced with her at co-ed, the mandatory gym class hoedown held on Friday mornings. Negro kids are accepted magnanimously. They rate high on the cool-o-meter. Teachers and kids dig their victim status and try not to act condescending. I told my father that I danced with Leona and blushed the whole time. He said, "Once you've had black, you can't go back." Howard Swansea is the alpha dog in JB's black litter. He's abrupt and outspoken and a great athlete. He's always scoping out weakness in white kids. He's a dancing motherfucker. He did the twist with Miss Byers, this red-headed English teacher with wheels like Sid Charisse. The other twisters froze and watched. The boys' gym dance was never the same. Steve Price is a little Lenny Bruce Manquet. He's the spritz personified. He's always trawling for straight men. He knows how to mine current events for big yaks. Jay Jaffe is any doppelganger. He's a popular kid with edgy nerves and some kind of wild hunger. He's socially deft and a great baseball player. He's got the stuff to get by on, laced in with some crazy shit. I observe him obsessively. If I could bite his neck and mix his DNA with mine, I could remake myself and not cede my own essence. Liz Gill is a pixie-like Hancock Park girl. She works for wholesome laughs. She knows the big JB Kid truth. Sex is the ridiculous, consuming thing that life is all about. There's something subversive in her pedigree. She probably wouldn't judge me for the dog shit on my living room floor. Richard Berkowitz refers to himself in the third person. He says, "I, the great Berko, have decreed," and "The exalted Berko welcomes you," routinely. He doesn't talk much beyond that. He's a restrained shtickmeister in a frenetic crowd. His stated ambition to serve as the towel boy in the girls' gym forever. The girls' gym adjoined the boys' gym. There were no secret passageways between them. They were separate outposts of Camelot. The boys' gym was a comedy club. Monomania reigned. The one joke was sex and the breathlessly close proximity of the girls' gym. One shtick lasted 3 whole years. Boys fluffed out their pubic hair and crooned, "Kooky, kooky, lend me your comb." The standard JB romantic form was the serial crush. Love affairs came and went sans physical contact or mutual acknowledgement. Crush objects rarely knew that they were crushed on. It was all decorous and voyeuristic and abetted by intermediaries. Crushers crushed on crushees and detailed their lust to their crush confidants. I cranked my crushes and confidant duty up to sustained surveillance. There's Leslie Jacobson. She's willowy. Her black bouffant bounces and shines. My stooge, Dave, loves her. He tracks her across the lunch court. I run point and linger near her in food lines. She's the quintessential teen fox. Dave can't get it up to address her. We discuss her and beat every aspect of her into the ground. Dave's crush fizzles out and reignites on a new girl. He carves her initials on his right arm and gets up the guts to show her. She flees in horror. I torched my way through Camelot. I burned flames for Jill Warner, Cynthia Gardner, Donna Weiss, and Kathy Montgomery. Jill's an in-your-face little blonde. She'll talk a blue streak to anyone. Her accessibility marks her as fatally flawed and thus a kindred spirit. She's hard to stalk. She keeps spotting me. She starts intimidating conversations and forces me to respond. Jill rates high on spunk and low on hauteur. I crave mystery and elusiveness in my women. It flips my fantasy switch and gives me groovy shit to talk about with my stalking buddies. Cynthia, Donna, and Kathy radiated wholesome beauty and hinted at stern character. I stalked them inside and outside of school and across a big patch of L.A. Jack Lift backstopped my surveillance. He lived across the street from Cynthia's pad at 6th and Crescent Heights. We shined shoes around the corner at the Royal Market and used it as our stakeout point. We tailed Cynthia around on our bikes the whole summer of '61. I knew my love was doomed. I knew the Berlin Wall thing would escalate to World War III at any moment. L.A. was scared. J.B. kids stocked up on goods at the Royal Market. We discussed the crisis and concluded that our time was running out. I told the kids that I was hot for Armageddon. They said I was nuts. Jack and I fucked up their shoes under the guise of free shines. The world survived. My crush on Cynthia Gardner didn't. I entered crush monogamy with Donna and Kathy and torched my J.B. days down to an ember. Donna had big eyes and a page boy hairdo. She lived at Beverly and Gardner, the heart of Kosher Canyon. I set up a voyeur spot by the Pan Pacific Theater and surveilled her after school and on weekends. I watched her front door. I watched people enter the synagogues on Beverly. Jack said they were war refugees. I perched by the Pan Pacific and watched the parade go by. I time-tripped back to World War II. I saved the people with the funny beanies and top hats. Donna loved me for it. Until I left her for Kathy. I traded up to a freckled brunette and a big house at 2nd and Plymouth. I boosted some Ivy League clothes to look more Hancock Park. The makeover thrilled me. JFK never looked so good. I hit a growth spurt, popped over 6 feet, and rendered my new threads obsolete. My pincord pants bottomed out at my ankles and drew jeers at 2nd and Plymouth. I never got up the stones to play Jack to Kathy's Jackie. I was starting to get the picture. Camelot was a private club and an inside joke, and I didn't know the password or the punchline. I went to the J.B. graduation dance on 6/14/62. I wore my father's 1940 vintage gray flannel suit and drank some T-Bird with a neighbor kid en route. I sweltered in gray flannel. I squeaked across the dance floor in brown canvas shoes. I asked Cynthia Gardner to dance. She accepted in the manner of nice girls worldwide. I sweated all over her and breathed Thunderbird wine in her face. The class of summer '62 passed into history. The 400-odd members dispersed to 3 local high schools. My season of crazy discourse ended. I didn't know what I walked away from. I left J.B. with no fanfare and no friendships intact. I didn't know what I'd learned about myself or other people. I didn't know that the inexorably destructive course of my life had been diverted and subsumed by a magical time and place. I didn't know that the seeds of a gift were nourished then and there, or that the raucous spirit I carried away would influence my ultimate survival. My life went way bad. I gave up 15 years to booze, dope, petty crime, and insanity. I rarely thought about John Burroughs Junior High School. I stumbled past it and never acknowledged it with affection. I never thought about my Stooges or Jay Jaffe and the great Burko. I carried snapshots of the girls in my head and loved them in place of real women. I almost died in '75 and cleaned up in '77. The act was reflexive and instinctive, and tweaked by ambiguous forces that I didn't comprehend in the moment. It was a blessed non sequitur. I didn't dissect the act or question its componentry. I didn't want to look back. I wanted to write books and look forward. I did it. I moved east to expedite my forward momentum. I shut my unacknowledged Camelot in a time-locked vault and forgot the combination. A series of external events clicked into place and inspired me to reinvestigate my mother's 1958 murder. I spent 15 months in L.A. and wrote a book about the investigation. It forced me to walk backward in time and linger in Camelot. My time lock blew. All the old players flew out of the vault. There's Howard Swansea. There's Burko and Jaffe. There's the girls I stalked and all the naked and the dead in a jumble of faces and voices. My memoir was published in November '96. I spent 10 days in L.A. on the publicity tour. Kosher Canyon and Hancock Park took on a wild new sheen. I drove by J.B. every chance I got. I sent up prayers for the faces and voices every time. I designated J.B. as a formal phenomenon. I developed narrative lines on the players and began to view them as kids and middle-aged men and women. They wore interchangeable masks. They moved between then and now in unpredictable ways. I fashioned their masks from memory and flattered them with their present-day faces. I did not know what they looked like now. I granted them beauty as a way to say, "Thanks for the ride." A year passed. My memoir was published in paperback. A toll-free number and email address were listed at the back of the text. They were there to solicit leads on my mother's murder. An old J.B. classmate read the book and contacted me. His name was Steve Horvitz. I didn't recall him. He remembered me vividly. He ran down a list of my antics and detailed his own life then to now. His parents were L.A. kids. His old man came out of Boyle Heights, and his old lady went to LeConte and Hollywood High. They broke up in '55, the same year my folks split the sheets. Steve lived at Olympic and Cochrane. He hung out with Ron Stillman, Ron Papple, and Jay Jaffe, all lawyers now. Jaffe moonlighted as a TV pundit. He worked the O.J. Simpson trial for KCBS. Steve went to San Francisco State. He stalked Jill Warner in Frisco, more successfully than I stalked her in L.A. He graduated and sold insurance. He went into his old man's wholesale candy and tobacco biz. He made a mint off high-interest CDs in the go-go years and bought a car wash and a marketing business. He did custom framing for model homes and design work for restaurants and coffee shops. He went into the sports lithograph field and lost a mint in the Bush recession. He was working on mint number 2 now. Credit card processing was hot, hot, hot. He had 2 sons, one from wife number 1 and one from wife number 2. Wife number 2 had a son from husband number 1. Wives, kids, mints. Life could be worse. Steve and I became friends. We shared a similar take on Camelot and rehashed the time and place in 2-hour phone talks. We debated John Hunt as sadist or man on moral mission. We dissected campus king Tony Schultz and Tony Blankley, now a big cheese with Newt Gingrich. Steve stayed in L.A. He didn't lock J.B. in a time vault. He retained a few friendships and had a handhold on the slender J.B. grapevine. He provided rumors and facts and a necrology. Howard Swansea, allegedly a cop. Jamie Osborne, dead in Vietnam. Mark Schwartz, dead, possibly a dope-related homicide. Eric Hendrickson, murdered in Frisco. Laurie Mullen, dead of cancer. Steve Schwartz, heroin OD. Steve Siegel and Ken Green, dead. Lots of attorneys. The law attracted bright kids who didn't know what else to do with their lives. Josh Trabulus, doctor. Liz Gill, TV writer. The great Burko, Burkoed out somewhere unknown. Cynthia Gardner, last seen as a Mormon housewife. Leslie Jacobson, allegedly a shrink. Steve lent me his Burr yearbooks. The photos served as synaptic triggers. My backlog of faces and events expanded 50-fold. Howard Swansea almost trades blows with Big Guy Huber. Leslie Jacobson twirls to the peppermint twist. Jay Jaffe wins a penny stomp that leaves a half-dozen kids bloody. Herb Steiner rags the folk song craze at the Burr Frolics. I disrupt a classroom post-mortem on the Bay of Pigs invasion. I contend that JFK should A-bomb Havana. Kids bomb me with wadded-up paper. I dig the attention and launch a counterattack. The teacher laughs. The same teacher laughed when Carol Chessman got fried. Steve and I deconstructed Camelot. We conceded the predictable nature of 50-year-olds looking back. We traced the known arc of J.B. lives and the mass reconstellation at Berkeley in the late 60s. We tagged it as predictably emblematic and explored it as a cliché and an issue of enduring ideals. We questioned J.B. as a substantive endeavor or a freeze frame from some ditzy teen flick. I categorized it as an auspicious L.A. lounge act. We opened strong. The curtain went down before we had to take it any further. Steve said, "Let's get some motherfuckers together." I said, "I'll fly out." The Pacific dining car defines my L.A. continuum. It's a swank steakhouse west of the downtown freeway loop. It's been there since 1921. It's open 24 hours every day of the year. It's dark, cave-like, and lushly contained in the middle of a poverty zone. I was born in the hospital half a block south. I met my wife at the dining car and married her there. Steve found most of the people. A private eye found the rest. The RSVP list tallied in at 99%. One dinner turned into 3. Steve and I attended them all. The dining car fed groups of 13, 12, and 9. We convened at the same long table in the same dark room. I can't break down the specific guest lists. The whirl of laughter and reminiscence ran seamless over 3 nights. Camelot Redux. There's Burko and Jaffe. There's Donna Weiss in a new page boy. Howard Swansea, a preacher instead of a cop. Helen Katzoff, Lorraine Biller, Joanne Brossman. Bright faces out of a big crowd 36 years back. Liz Gill and Penny Hunt from Hancock Park. A big Kosher Canyon contingent that I knew by name and yearbook photo only. Josh Trabulus, a small boy, a tall man. More lawyers than an ABA convention. Jill Warner, in your face a la 1960. Steve Price with the same fucking grin. Tony Schultz in saddle shoes. Leslie Jacobson, sans bouffant, and the peppermint twist. We toasted the dead and the missing. Wallet photos went around. Nobody asked the childless people why they didn't breed. We all agreed that J.B. was a blast. Anecdotes passed as insight into why. We decided to throw a mass reunion early next year and elected a steering committee. 1 person in 10 remembered me. I recalled every name and face and could have picked half the people out of a 1,000-slot lineup. It told me how hungry and lonely I was then. It confirmed everything I'd come to believe about my cut-rate Camelot. We agreed that we were all observers. We all superimposed our shaky psyches against the boss bods we wanted and wished we had, and came up way short. We punted then. We conformed or got raucous to cut the edge off the pain. Everyone came off prosperous and well cared for. We looked like a prophecy of affluence fulfilled. I didn't detect much smugness. The braggarts boasted too hard and vibed naked more than middle-aged dead. I picked out 2 functioning drunks. I judged as I laughed and observed. It didn't mar my enjoyment or subvert my affection one bit. I listened more than I talked. I table-hopped and found the people I carried around in my head. They told me their stories and filled in that big gap in time. Jay Jaffe played baseball at USC and went to the College World Series. He batted .306 and had a 3-night tryout with the San Diego Padres. They expressed interest and never called him back. He went to law school and gravitated to the criminal defense field. He liked the combat and the mix of people in trouble. He liked to explore motive and mitigation. He'd handled some big cases. He won the celebrated burrito murder case. The LAPD tried to shaft an innocent Mexican kid. Jay got him off. He was still hungry. He loved his work the way he loved baseball. Liz Gill wrote TV movies. She fell into it. People told her she was funny and urged her to get her shit down on paper. She had a bad run with booze and cleaned up in '75. She knew the big joke then. She still knew it. Other people sensed her gift and pointed her on her way. Berko Berkowitz went to Vietnam. He defecated in his pants quite a few times. He returned to the States and got strung out on booze and dope. He ran a string of businesses into the ground and cleaned up 12 years ago. He made a big wad in real estate and watched it grow. He works as a homeless advocate and digs on his wife and 2 kids. Jill Warner was a teacher up in Oakland. She had a daughter with her ex-husband. I told her I used to stalk her. She applauded my good taste and asked me if I defaced her house in 1963. I said no. Jill laughed and got up in my face like she did at JB. Howard Swansea played all-city sports at L.A. High School. He tried to get on the LAPD and Sheriff's Department and flunked the screening process. He sold TV ad time for 17 years and became a minister. He had a congregation in Carson. Howard looked hungry. He still had alpha dog eyes. He liked to run the show. The raw language at the table torqued him the wrong way. I spent some time with Donna Weiss. I described the big stakeout of 1961 and the unrequited crush that inspired it. Donna praised my stalking prowess. She never spotted me. A 6-foot, 13-year-old boy on a candy apple bike. I was invisible then. The world was out to ignore me. Donna spent time in Spain and studied at the University of Madrid. She learned the language and came back to L.A. She taught in the city school system and spent 3 years down in South Central. Some Chicano kids were stranded in an all-black school with no English language skills. Donna got the little fuckers fluent. She quit teaching and went into real estate. She's been at it 20 years. Her husband's a voice coach and the locally lauded Cantor to the Stars. My crush burned out 37 years ago. Donna's presence did not resurrect it. I was irrevocably in love with my wife. Tony Schultz starred in the first New York stage run of Grease. He worked as an actor for 20-plus years and burned out behind the inherent frustrations. He sold real estate now. His turf bordered Donna's. Leslie Jacobson went to Berkeley and lived 2 blocks down from Tony. She became an anti-war activist and street agitator. She got a teaching credential. She married husband number 1. She entered the mental health field. A colleague got raped. Leslie viewed the brutal aftermath and took it as a signal. She studied rape and post-rape trauma. She ran a rape crisis hotline and an innovative anti-rape program. She went out on rape calls with the Huntington Park PD and trained cops in rape awareness. She ditched husband number 1 and married husband number 2. He was a doctor. Leslie became a psychotherapist. She built up a practice. She studied breast cancer and its ramifications and counseled afflicted women. She and her husband collaborate and stage breast cancer seminars. I listened to my old classmates. I felt the restrained warmth that you feel for decent people you shared a past with and don't really know. I observed 34 individuals over 3 nights. I detected one significant difference between them and me. They came to reconnect with specific people and dig on a collective nostalgia. I came to honor them and acknowledge their part in my debt. The debt was large. JB was my first testing ground. I learned to compete there. I nurtured a perverse self-sufficiency. My warped little world meshed with the real world for one brief, shining moment. L.A. was hot and smoggy. I was wiped out behind all my time travel and the clash of old, new people. I took a ride with Tony Schultz. It felt like my 7 millionth hot L.A. day. Tony was digging it. He ran a riff on the new L.A., immigrant cultures and wild cuisines and big rejuvenation. We drove down to Howard Swansea's church. We made the noon service 10 minutes early. The joint was jumping jubilantly high. A 6-piece combo backed up the choir. 60 loud voices praised God. They soared over loud air conditioner blasts and woke me up like 6 cups of coffee. The church was SRO. Howard saved 2 pew slots near the altar. The congregation was 99.9% black. The people were snazzily dressed and ran toward the plump side. I hit the pause button on my life. Fast forward and rewind clicked off. I got choked up behind a big blast of gratitude. The service commenced. I sang hymns for the first time since First Dutch Lutheran and shared smiles with Tony. I felt intractably Protestant and unassailably unchristian. I grooved on John Osborne's Luther. He slayed the papist beast because he was constipated and wanted to get laid. The collection plate went around. Tony and I fed the kitty. Howard hit the altar and introduced us. We stood up and waved to the people. They waved back. Howard launched into his sermon. He was main room talent in a South Side carpet joint. He strutted. He stalked. He banged the pulpit and shouted over a 4-octave range. The crowd went nuts. He sustained a half-hour roar. He sweated up his vestments and blew out his lungs with the word on salvation. Go, Howard, go! It was a New Testament greatest hits medley. It was a deftly etched exposition of your alternatives. Embrace Jesus or fry in hell forever. It proclaimed the restrictive housing law in heaven. I wouldn't want to buy a tract in that development. They wouldn't sell to pork dodgers or skeptics or that Muslim guy at my favorite falafel stand. They'd exclude the bulk of the JB class of 1962. Howard cranked it out. My mind wandered. I dipped 36 years back and 36 years into the future. I wondered how many bonds would rekindle and flourish in the wake of 3 effusive evenings. I thought about a survivor's bash in 2034. A collective senescence might color the proceedings and distort recollections for better or worse. Let's twist again, like we did that summer. It's a teen dance party at the Mount Sinai Nursing Home. A boss combo rules the bandstand. It features all my old heartthrobs on skin flute. Jack and Jackie appear. The kids go nuts. Jack nuked Castro just last week. He's on a fucking roll. Jack cuts a rug with Leslie Jacobson. He eyeballs Donna Weiss and Jill Warner. He can't commit to an image. He doesn't know whether to shit or go blind. Somebody slips LSD in the punch. The JB dead resurrect. Jackie goes down on the great Burko. Howard cranked it out. I looked around the pews. I locked eyes with a tall black kid. He looked bored and agitated. I winked. He smiled. The Apostolic Church of Peace turned into the Peppermint Lounge. I sent up a prayer for the kid. I wished him imagination and a stern will and lots of raucous laughs. I wished him a wild mix of people to breeze through and linger with over time. November 1998. This concludes the reading of Crime Wave by James Ellroy. This book was read by Michael Prichard.